Ministers, members of the Legislative Assembly, mayors, councillors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of Edmonton Economic Development, welcome to Impact, Edmonton's Economic Outlook Luncheon for 2014. My name is Randy Boissonneau, President of Xenix Inc. As someone who is deeply involved in business, social entrepreneurship, and innovation here in Edmonton, an event like this presents a valuable opportunity for business and community leaders to come together to outline the direction of our city and of our economy over the next 12 months. At this time, I would also like to welcome those who are joining us for the online broadcast at edmonton.com/impact and edmontonjournal.com/EEDC. For those of you following on Twitter, our hashtag is #Impact2014. So that's hashtag IMPACT2014, no spaces. I encourage those of you here in the room to tweet out your observations and your comments from today's Impact Luncheon. The French philosopher Albert Camus once wrote, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." I think that phrase sums up the spirit of many people in this room and across the capital region. It explains how we can live with -30 weather and enjoy +30 weather. It explains the contract we make every year with winter, and it explains how collectively we in this room and our fellow citizens across the city and throughout the generations have succeeded in building all that we call home here in this part of Canada along the banks of the North Saskatchewan River in Edmonton. We are honored to have some special guests here in the audience with us today. In the interest of time, I will acknowledge them collectively and ask them to stand and remain standing, followed by your applause. So, we welcome and recognize members of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, Edmonton City Council, as well as mayors, councillors, and other elected officials from the Edmonton region. Would you all please stand? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, please, our civic dignitaries. Thanks to each of you for being with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have several exciting things lined up for you today. But first, I know one thing for certain. You are all waiting for permission to begin, so please enjoy your first course. This event would not be possible without our presenting sponsor, Deloitte, as well as partners like CGI, ISMC Inc., Gilead Alberta, ULC, Stantec Consulting, the Edmonton Journal, and Capital Ideas. Please join me in acknowledging their support of this event. I would also like to thank our door prize sponsor, Edmonton International Airports, who will be drawing for 2 tickets on the new American Airlines nonstop to Dallas-Fort Worth starting on April 1st, 2014. If you haven't done so already, be sure to drop off your business card at the registration desk in the foyer to enter. The draw will take place at the end of our program. Now please join me in welcoming the Edmonton Economic Development Board Chair, Peter Silverstone, to the stage. Peter needs little introduction, but as a physician who has gone on to great success in both business and academia, we are fortunate to have his leadership on the board, and we are pleased that he is with us today. Please welcome Peter Silverstone.
Thank you. I'll be fairly brief today. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming. The Impact Lunch is really important to us at EEDC. I've been on the board for 6 years and chair for the last 2, and I'm really excited about where Edmonton is going. I hope you will be too at the end of this. And I'm very sad that my 6-year term is coming to an end shortly. Particularly, we have some very exciting new leadership in terms of the city. We have leadership you'll hear from EEDC. And we have some wonderful board members too. So I'm just going to introduce the board members. and thank them for their time. And then I will introduce somebody bringing greetings from the province. And to make sure I don't forget anybody, I have a list, so I'm going to thank my fellow board members. There is John Babick from Dalmac Energy Incorporated, Richard Bromelyard from Technology Brokers Incorporated, Rob Campry from Broker Systems Limited, Doug Cox from Touchstone Holdings Limited, Norm Hansen from Thermex Metal Treating Limited, Paul Ingram from the Silverberg Group, Mayor Don Iverson, who is on our board, Chris Yeager from Cougar Investments, Mark McNeil, Masterflow Valve Inc., Roger Palmer from Lead Consulting, myself from the University of Alberta, Tracy Scarlett from the Alberta Women's Entrepreneurs, Barry Travers from KPMG, and Richard Wong from Chateau Lacombe. Please join me in thanking these people for putting such a vast amount of time into EDC. Thank you all, fellow board members. So my final task is to introduce a man who needs no introduction. And of course, whenever you hear that, you think, well, why are you introducing him? Well, I'm introducing him to bring greetings from the province. I'm actually looking for where he is to see if he's ready to come on stage yet. And I'm hoping he is. There, okay, good. And when I say needs no introduction, I think that Deputy Premier Hancock has been wonderful for the city and the province. And I think that all of us look forward to his role in enterprise and advanced education. I could go on for a long while. He specifically asked me not to, and therefore, without further ado, I'd like to join me in welcoming Minister Hancock.
What he didn't know is I was going to pay him by the word. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here, and it's really exciting to be here with you today on behalf of our Premier Alison Redford and all of my colleagues in government. And you'll know from the earlier introductions as people stood that there are quite a few of us here because we believe that the partnership we have with Economic Development Edmonton, with the City of Edmonton, the capital region, is so important. So we're joined today by Doug Horner, Minister of Finance and Treasury Board, Ken Hughes, Minister of Municipal Affairs, Diana McQueen, Minister of Energy, and I know I saw Matt Generou, Steve Young, Dave Quest, Janice Sarich, James Wozdeski, the Speaker. Quite a number of our provincial colleagues here with you today to talk about impact in Edmonton. I want to thank Edmonton Economic Development Corporation for inviting me to bring greetings on behalf of our Premier and our colleagues. Alberta continues to have the strongest balance sheet of any province in Canada. Private forecasters such as CIBC, TD, BMO, Scotiabank, and the Conference Board of Canada predict that Alberta will continue to be Canada's economic engine in 2014. We have the second lowest unemployment rate in Canada at 4.8%, well below the national average of 7.2%, and I believe it's fair to say we still have the highest participation rate in the country. We created over 61,400 jobs in 2013, over a quarter of all the jobs created in the country. And people continue to come to Alberta to take advantage of the opportunities that we have here. We have the fastest population growth in Canada. We've surpassed 4 million people, and we're expecting to reach 5 million people in the next 20 years. Population growth is not our only challenge this year. We must continue to focus our efforts and our resources on rebuilding communities that were affected by the June floods, a flood that has been called Canada's most expensive national disaster, an estimated $6 billion event. But despite these challenges, we're well prepared to deal with the fiscal challenges that lie ahead in 2014. We remain committed to being fiscally responsible and will continue to invest in critical infrastructure and the services that matter to Albertans. And when I talk about critical infrastructure, one of the most important infrastructures for Alberta is our human capital. The next phase of Premier Redford's Building Alberta plan will set the stage for our province's economic future by focusing on expanding our economy, driving innovation, and creating a better quality of life for Albertans. And our work has already begun. Last week, we announced the new Alberta Economic Development Authority Board, a talented team that will provide government with valuable advice to help inform and guide our economic policies and programs. Several members are from Edmonton, and will ensure that Edmonton's perspective is heard at the table as we work to improve market access and diversify our provincial economy. A key part of building the Alberta Plan is finding new ways to grow and diversify the economy. Our government has identified 4 key priorities to help bolster our economy. That includes expanding Alberta's presence and role in the global marketplace. The Premier right now is on a trip to India to open our new trade office there, a bold step in a new direction for us. Solidifying Alberta as a world-leading centre for resource-based and resource-related industries. Edmonton and the Capital Region are the 3rd largest manufacturing hub in Canada, but we can grow that sector even further. We want to foster clusters that offer high growth potential to broaden Alberta's economic base, such as tourism, industrial construction, value-added energy, forestry, and agriculture. Innovation is going to be the key to this province's future. We need to inspire entrepreneurs to innovate, commercialize, and expand businesses across the province, and build a stronger culture of entrepreneurship within our province by doing such things as updating the K-12 curriculum to ensure the entrepreneurial spirit is embedded in what our children learn. They're ambitious goals and achievable, but only if we work together. The Government of Alberta is committed to working with Edmonton Economic Development Corporation, the City of Edmonton, and our other economic development partners across the province to make these goals a reality. Edmonton continues to be an important driver of the provincial economy, and I'm certain that the Edmonton Economic Development Corporation and the City of Edmonton will work hard to ensure that Edmonton is positioned for even greater success in 2014. Edmonton and the Authority continue to be one of government's most valued partners. Together, we have collaborated on a number of strategic economic initiatives, including the development of our small business strategy. And I look forward to working together with Economic Development Edmonton Corporation in the coming weeks and months as we move forward in building Alberta. A new year brings new challenges, but also new opportunities that have the potential to shape Alberta's future for the better. It's a very exciting time for our community. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the program, and I'm very much looking forward to working with you as we build a better place for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Peter, for your many years of service to economic development here in the Capital Region. And thank you, Deputy Premier Hancock, for the provincial perspective that you have brought us today by being with us. Listening to the Deputy Premier speak reminds me of Neil Ferguson's writing on civilizations and the importance of strong institutions to shape and lead our society. Building and maintaining strong political, economic, and judicial systems is historically one of Canada's strongest international exports. Fortunately, in this part of the world, we have a strong provincial government, and we also benefit in our city from an effective municipal government as well. Only 3 months ago, Edmontonians went to the polls to elect a new mayor. Their choice was clear and signaled a new era of positive thinking and pride in this city. Mayor Don Iveson was born and raised here, and his passion for our city is evident. A member of City Council since 2007, he is known for engaging with people and confronting civic issues head-on. In a city that is becoming increasingly globally competitive, issues like fiscal responsibility, infrastructure, urban development, regional relationships, and social issues are demanding our attention. Edmonton has come a long way, but Mayor Iveson and his new council will continue to challenge us to rise to the occasion when it comes to economic development and quality of life. His vision for the future sees generations choosing Edmonton as the place to call home and build success. Ladies and gentlemen, please extend a very warm welcome to our next speaker, His Worship, Mayor Don Iveson.
Well, good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of my City Council colleagues, many of whom are joining me here today, Councillor Walters, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Oshry, Councillor Nickel, Councillor Esslinger, and Councillor Katarina, It's a pleasure to be here for EEDC's annual Economic Impact Luncheon. I'd like to begin by taking a moment to thank Edmonton Economic Development for its unwavering dedication to our city. It's been a real treat for me to join the board and participate in my first opportunity to serve as a member of the board of directors, and I'm very, very confident in the direction that we're heading and in the directors who I serve along with, that I think this corporation is in very good hands. For more than 20 years, EEDC's leadership and vision has inspired a culture of entrepreneurship, innovation, and ambition in Edmonton and in our region. Right now, our city is one of the best places in the world to take a risk, to launch an idea, or start a business. So as Mayor of Edmonton and on behalf of all of our citizens, I want to thank EEDC, led by Brad Ferguson, for all that they've done and continue to do to support this climate of spectacular opportunity in our city. I think I speak for everyone here when I say that there is a renewed sense of optimism here in Edmonton. This optimism is driven by a spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship in areas ranging from green technology to medical research to agriculture. And we can help expand this spirit into new areas by continuing to build on the successes we see at Tech Edmonton and Startup Edmonton, and by supporting more early and mid-stage incubation. And we can also start to focus on unlocking innovation and entrepreneurship in our First Nations communities and immigrant communities, because ideas are plentiful in this city. It's what we will do with those ideas that will continue to transform Edmonton into a yet more globally competitive city. But the good news is the hard work is already paying off. Venture capital firms are beginning to notice what's happening in Edmonton. They're flying north and they're investing. Let's give them more reasons to come, to invest, and ultimately to stay. Now, just as importantly, the city and EEDC will continue to encourage the growth of our local venture capital network so more Edmonton investors can support entrepreneurship right here in our community. We must continue to build on our success as Canada's best business incubator and continue to promote and foster entrepreneurship in Edmonton. All of this is key to increasing our ability to be yet more globally competitive. And we must also continue to capitalize on our unique opportunity, where Edmonton is situated as the economic and service hub of our North. As the North's major urban research, manufacturing, and supply center, Edmonton has developed a diversified base of business and industry. Collectively, though, we must start to view Northern Alberta, and in fact, our Canadian North, from a larger economic and regional perspective. There is yet untapped potential for Edmonton to further align ourselves with northern communities, businesses, and governments to increase new trade, tourism, and economic opportunities. That's why I traveled to Fort McMurray on my first trip outside of Edmonton, to ensure that communities in the north know that I take very, very seriously the links and the relationships that we have to maintain and grow into the future with our northern trading partners. Overall, EEDC is going to help continue to foster
Thank you, Mayor Iveson. Your vision for the city is a central element of the new spirit of optimism and the renaissance that we are enjoying here in Edmonton in 2014. We are excited to hear more from you later in the question and answer period of today's program. I will be back at the podium around 12:35 when we will introduce the Edmonton Economic Development Statement of Intent for 2014. In the meantime, please enjoy your lunch and the fellowship of the company at your table. We're now going to continue on with our program. Before we hear from Edmonton Economic Development President and CEO Brad Ferguson, let's kick things off with a look back at the year that was.
It's what is best for the city of Edmonton We will have a brand new arena. This is about building a future for tomorrow, building a city that sees and wants its younger generation to see this as a place for them to build their tomorrows.
We can build a city of heroes.
We're encouraging all Edmontonians to make something, hence the name, Make Something Edmonton. People do come here and they start something, and I think that that's really infectious.
The opening game here in Edmonton, 60,000 people, all wearing red.
First inaugural flight to New York puts Edmontonians about 4 hours from United Airlines' major hub. And let's not forget all the benefits associated with bringing New Yorkers to the Edmonton region.
Entrepreneurism and innovation is just so essential. It's very much at the fabric, the DNA of the Edmonton brand.
We've always said that Edmonton is full of talent. We're always focusing on solving local problems, but thinking about it from a global perspective.
Now Edmonton's been amazing. We got great momentum. If people can go to lightthebridge.ca.
The more stuff we can light up, I think the better.
We can all feel proud as Edmontonians that we did something together.
Major work will begin today on the Walterdale Bridge.
CN Canadian Women's Open officially teed off this morning at the Royal Mayfair.
So first of all, it's worldwide. There'll be cyclists coming from around the world. It is truly an international event.
The Edmonton International Airport announced today that Icelandair will offer 4 direct flights every week.
Welcome to E-Town.
Welcome to E-Town.
This is E-Town. Please welcome with open arms, Commander Chris Hatfield.
I think what this has done is just stimulated Edmontonians, Albertans to come together and really share ideas.
It is great to play with these guys. Thank you very much,
Just absolutely fantastic. It feels like the start of something big.
The best place to film Freezer turned out to be Edmonton.
This is a city of imagination and ideas, of hard work. We know what we're most proud of, and that should be our only standard as we continue building.
Let's give a round of applause for that video. It is now my pleasure to introduce Brad Ferguson, President and CEO of Edmonton Economic Development, to give the 2014 Statement of Intent. Since he started as President and CEO a year and a half ago, Brad Ferguson has wasted no time in turning this organization around. Now oriented towards growing Edmonton's culture of entrepreneurship, innovation, and competitiveness, the agency is pushing forward progressive thinking and getting things done. More than anything, I know that Brad loves this city, and he thoroughly enjoys raising his family here in Edmonton. Having studied at the U of A with Brad, at the same time as Brad, I always had the sense that someday he would lead an organization that would shape Edmonton and Alberta's future. So it is the case already with his work here at EEDC. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the stage Brad Ferguson.
So last October, a month after I started at EEDC, I was sitting in council chambers, and it was Councillor Amarjeet Sohi's turn to ask some questions about our plans and our budget for the future and the upcoming year. And he leaned into the microphone and he said, "Mr. Ferguson, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the image and reputation of our city?" And I paused for a moment, thinking about my new role as supposedly the cheerleader of the city, you know, the manager of first impression, the person that's out supposed to market our city to the world. And before I knew it, I opened my mouth and the truth came out. And I said 1.5 out of 10, sir, 1.5 out of 10. And as I was leaving council chambers, Vinesh Patrup from Global TV grabbed me by the arm and he said, "What made you say 1.5? Why not 2? Couldn't we do 2? And I looked at him and I said, "Vinesh, you know, I didn't want to understate the work that needs to be done." I stood at this podium a year ago knowing that a lot had to change. Our organization had lost some confidence from City Council, had lost a lot of relevance from the business community, and I said I wanted to come back in a year's time and be accountable for some results and for some change. At my first meeting with the shareholder, our City Council in January, Councillor Tony Caterina walked up to me after my presentation and said, "6 months ago, I put a motion on the floor to close down this organization. I sincerely hope you get it going in the right direction before the next annual general meeting in 6 months. Nothing like a little bit of pressure to kick off your year." And at the first leadership team meeting at CEEDC, the leadership team was everybody director level and above. We had 30 people sitting in our boardroom, kind of waiting for me to come in. And I came in, and we have this enormous boardroom, 30 people sitting there. And I sat down at the end, and I took out a handful of cue cards, and I passed them out to everybody at the table. I said, "I'd like everybody to write down the 3 most important things this organization needs to do now." And I waited 10 minutes, absolute silence, people writing, thinking, what needs to happen? And then I collected the cue cards, tapped them on the table, ended the meeting and walked out. And I went back to my office and I was anxiously waiting to see what the cue cards said. And very consistently throughout the entire leadership team at EEDC, it said, "We want you to focus the organization, clean out the organization, rebuild the organization." And then a week later, we had a staff meeting, or kind of town hall meeting, brought all the staff together. And I provided a little background on myself, probably told some stories. And at the end of it, I asked if there was any questions. And usually at that kind of meeting, there aren't any questions. It's kind of dead silence. And then very slowly, there's this hand that arose from the back of the 2 tables back. And there's this gentleman, the white shirt, pink tie, black glasses, Brent Beattie, one of our great tourism salespeople in the organization today. He rose his hand and he said, "How long are you going to be here for?" Which is exactly the right question to ask. It's just nobody ever has the courage to ask it. But what he was doing, he was asking it on behalf of the entire staff and was saying, if you're committed, we're committed, and we'll help you get there. And I can stand here today proud of the work we've done and the changes we've made in the last 12 months. But those changes could not have happened without total, absolute, and unfettered support from City Council and Mayor Mandel at the time, our board and our chair, Peter Silverstone, our leadership team who gave me permission to make the changes we need to have made, and to a great group of employees who desperately wanted to be encouraged and inspired and to get out there and help build a great city. So to all those people, before I start, I'd like to just say thank you, because without them, we couldn't have accomplished what we did in the speed that we did it without you. So please give them a round of applause. To give you an idea of the changes that we've made, and I said I'd want to be accountable to reporting back to the business community, not just to council, is right now, 36% of the people in the EDC have been there for less than 1 year. And another 24% on top of that are in new roles or doing new things that never existed before, which means 60% of the organization is either new or doing new things for the business community. And through the process, we inverted this traditional pyramid that often exists in public-facing organizations. We inverted it such that now we are 12% are boomers, 42% are Gen X, and 46% are Gen Y. And with a 52-48 split male-female in the organization. So the result, what we have after a year, is a fresh, young, inspired, female-friendly organization with a kind of culture that we want working as the sales and marketing arm of your city. And I couldn't be more proud of them. We were able to attract some great people to the organization, people like Maggie Davison as our VP of Tourism. Maggie's rebuilt her team, reestablished relationships with the Edmonton destination hotels, and reconnected with Travel Alberta with the goal of establishing Edmonton as a favored destination for those in the West and in the North. And we have people like Glenn Vanstone and Michael Powell who are positioning us back as the logistics, transportation, and manufacturing center for Alberta, or Darcy Vane, who's working to make Edmonton the hospitality, sports, and entertainment and retail center for the West, or the addition of Ken Chapman and Adam Sweet, who have sharpened our focus in the North, specifically to be in better economic relationship with places like Fort McMurray, Yellowknife, and those communities above 60 degrees north. Together, the team has worked over 60 projects in the last year, has resulted in over $1.5 billion of capital expenditures in the Edmonton region in 2013, all while our internal changes had to go on. People and culture make the difference in the city, and our organization needed to embody that culture. And our latest survey results said that 88% of the business community that we surveyed said we're going in the right direction. And another 92% said we're delivering significantly more value after 12 months than we did 12 months ago. So I look back on this year with great pride, and it's our team, but we don't operate alone. We have people like Chris Lum over at Tech Edmonton, which is the #1 business incubator in Canada, number 17 in the world. Ken Batista at Startup Edmonton, who really has the leading model for rolling out entrepreneurial innovation and incubation across the country right now. Reg Milley and his team at the airport. James Cumming at the Chamber. Don Hickey at U of A, Jody Abbott at Norquest. And you have our MLAs in the room. We've got people like James Rajat and Laurie Hahn and Mike Lake at the federal level. We all work together as an economic development team. Nobody works in isolation. And that's in association with the city administration that we do things hand in hand with every day. And the culture of winning is what we're building, because we believe winning is important, no different than you do in your business. And we're up against some of the most beaten up cities across the world right now that are investing heavily to attract things to their city, to take things away from us. And our ability to compete and to be different has never been more important. A few companies in this city that have stepped up and have returned the favor are people that, like Deloitte and Gilead and Stantec and CGI, who have been sponsors for today. And I'd like to especially thank Deloitte for stepping up and being not only our lead sponsor today, but for working with Edmonton companies on becoming many of Canada's 50 best, as well as for leading the charge across the country in productivity improvements for local companies. Last year was a great year. And if we look at it, our objective was to outperform every other regional economy in North America, and we did. Our GDP was over $81 billion for the first time last year, growing at 4.3% average versus a 2.1% average across the country and a 2.0% in North America. Our population in the Edmonton region, we have 840,000 people in Edmonton, and it's about 1.2 million in the region. It's been growing at about 3.9% over the last year, which is about as fast as you can grow a mature economy without your infrastructure lagging behind. And those are the reasons we need things like LRT and major infrastructure investments as our top priority going forward. We added 19,700 new jobs, which is down from the year before, but we have to look at that across the country. 1 out of every 10 jobs created across the country happened here in the Edmonton region. And that's still like adding a city the size of Red Deer every 4 years to our employment community. Unemployment crept up a little bit because of the influx of people to the region, but still 50% lower than the national average. We've kept inflation low, which allows everybody to bring home more money at the end of the day and keep more money in their bank account. We have a record number of building permits, about $3 billion of building permits. We had 10,600 new housing starts last year, which is up 12% from the year before and the highest number in the last 12 years. And we have this thing called $220 billion of mega projects that are on the books to happen over the next 10 years. And if we get an understanding of what $220 billion is, it's like building the World Trade Center in New York, one of those downtown Edmonton, 6 times a year for the next 12 years. $220 billion is like building the Palm Islands in Dubai twice a year for the next 18 years. Or it's like building one of these once a week for the next 12 years, which we're going to be delighted to see break ground in the spring of 2014. And if we go down the level and we add things like the museum, downtown, Norquest's expansion, we have on the books right now probably 2 downtown hotels, 2 new office towers we're expecting in 2014, and a vibrancy that should double the number of residents in the downtown core over the next 7 years. It's just a feeling of aliveness is starting to happen, and the momentum is starting to take over. But probably the most important accomplishment, the change that we see and feel the most, is a sense of new confidence and self-esteem and connection that people have and have embraced with their city. And when I travel to Toronto or Montreal or New York, or when celebrities like Bruce Croxon from Dragon's Den, you saw him on the video, or last night, Justin Timberlake, whose concert went on way too long. You know, when we meet with them, they kind of wave their finger right now in a way that says, something's happening there. Not sure what it is, but it's all good. But something's happening. And to that, Councillor Sohi leads me to believe that we may be a 2.5 out of 10 at the end of this year, which we have a long way to go, but it's a 66.6% improvement over last year. This is a new Edmonton with a new mayor, a new confidence, and a new energy. And you're all out there telling the story. We're no longer the boom-bust economy of the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s as we went up and down and things happened to us. Over the last 12 years, as the oil sands have moved from an exploration-based activity to a manufacturing-based activity, our growth has become much more predictable, and our volatility has been replaced with confidence. We're a city traditionally known as that northern node on the Edmonton-Calgary corridor. And now we understand that it's actually at the epicenter, the confluence of not only the Edmonton-Calgary corridor, but the Edmonton-Fort McMurray corridor, and I would suggest the Edmonton-Grand Prairie, Fort St. John, the Edmonton-Cold Lake, the Edmonton-Yellowknife, and the Edmonton further north corridor. And you add that to a range of pipelines that are going to start to come on route over the next number of years, going east, west, north, and south, as well as a CP line and a CN line. And Edmontonians are starting to realize that they're uniquely positioned at the epicenter of the industrial supply chain for goods and services originating out of Western Canada. What we have here is unique, what we have here is special, and it's our time to take advantage of it. When you extrapolate that out over the next 2 decades, we're anticipating us contributing $2.1 trillion of economic contribution to the country. That equates into $378 billion of taxes that we pay that the rest of the country uses for social programs and programs to be distributed across the great land that we have. We're going to produce about 905,000 new jobs in Alberta because of what's happening in northern Alberta. And that'll create about 126,000 new jobs in the rest of Canada. 64% happen in Ontario. And as well as we'll probably procure about $117 billion of goods and services from the rest of the country. And what we're sitting on is an unprecedented opportunity if we get it right. And what do I mean by that? As I travel and I see what's going on at MIT and Harvard and Stanford and Berkeley, as well as some of the best business incubators around the world, I realize that some of the smartest, most well-capitalized people in the world wake up every morning, set out to prove what we do here is wrong. And that's a very real threat. And that's much more powerful than the Neil Young's Quest for Relevance tour that's going on right now. It's a very real threat. So let's look at some facts. If we look at GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, in Canada, Canada represents 0.5% of the world's population. We produce 2% of the greenhouse gas emissions, of which about 0.14 comes from the oil sands. And we've reduced that number 26% per barrel since 1990, but it's not good enough. If we look at our use of fresh water, as we shift now from, and we're doing 97% of all new mining activity is now in situ, and a significantly lower amount of water use through in situ, and we see it reduces our water per barrel, as well as 80 to 95% of the water we use is now recycled, and it only draws 0.6 of the flow of the Athabasca River. But the world's telling us it's just not good enough yet. If we look at our physical footprint in Canada, we have 3.2 million square kilometers of boreal forest, 142,000 square kilometers of which is located in the oil sands area. We use less than 5,000 square kilometers that are zoned for industrial, and only 715 square kilometers are actually mining operations, but it's still too big. It's still not good enough. And if we look at our tailings ponds record, which are really a combination of water, clay, sand, and the residual oil, a small amount of residual oil, we have 176 square kilometers of tailings ponds, of which by law, 100% need to be reclaimed. And we're currently spending over $1 billion a year in research and development, and have reduced the number of years it takes to reclaim from 50 to 7.7, but guess what? It's not good enough. The only way we become good enough is if every company doing business with the energy sector and the industrial supply chain, every company in this room starts embracing the mantra of doing things cleaner, greener, safer, faster, cheaper. And I don't mean that as a sustainability report that you produce along with your financial statements at the end of the year, which really is a marketing document of all the good things we did. It's about baking it into your mission statements, which is if I make widgets for the oil sands, I make widgets that need to make the oil sands cleaner, greener, safer, faster, or cheaper. That's the mantra we need to embrace, and that's the mantra that's going to ignite a whole new wave of innovation. This reality presents a historic challenge for us as a community. No different than 50 years ago, the challenge was to develop the science and technology to extract the value out of the oil sands. Today, our challenge is how do we extend the life, extract the value, and export to market this trillion-dollar, trillion-barrel resource that we've been blessed with. As well, I'll put the second half of that statement up here, which is at the same time we create a whole new generation of entrepreneurs and Canadian-based global companies. That's the challenge that we're focused on when we wake up every day at EEDC, and that's the challenge I'd like to offer up to you inside your organizations. And what an opportunity. The oil sands and its industrial supply chain is a trillion-dollar platform for innovation if we think about it as a platform for innovation, which should spawn new technology companies in areas like monitoring and detection of and sensors, robotic manufacturing, advanced coatings and wear technologies, data analytics, microtechnologies, nanotechnologies, wireless devices, biomaterials and compounds, water technologies, construction technologies, unmanned vehicles. I could go on and on and on. All those things we talk about of how we're going to, what we'd like to do to diversify our economy, and it's sitting right under our feet. The oil sands and the industrial supply chain are the platform of which we get to diversification, but we need to become focused on it, and we need to have a national imperative that calls for it. That's how we diversify the economy. And for the first time in our history, our capabilities have began to catch up with our ambitions. There's nothing holding us back. In each one of those technology sectors, we're almost there. We're doing real scale, real prototype activities that need to be implemented across this province. And we can't do it alone. It can't all happen here. We need to open up the access point and invite the rest of the country to participate. Entrepreneurs and scientists and researchers and innovators from McGill and U of T and McMaster and Queen's and UBC, and we need to throw out a series of grand challenges, not just to extend the life of our trillion-dollar, trillion-barrel resource, but it's an opportunity to bring the country together as a national imperative that impacts us all, but also at the same time creates a generation of entrepreneurs across the country. And guess what? If we can do it in the energy sector, we can also do it in healthcare, education, and public service, three biggest industries that have yet to be radically disrupted by technology. And we need to build our industries and build our entrepreneurs and activate the country at the same time. That's economic development, and that's wealth creation. Our problems need to become Canada's problems and an opportunity for the nation to participate. Not only does it unleash the brain power and ingenuity across the country, but it also puts us on the same team for those little things we call market access. So looking forward, we have 5 themes that will take us into the years ahead at EEDC. And I hope you agree with me that these should be the priorities, the big priorities. The first, we need to alert the world of the energy in Edmonton. We need to be in the marketing business. We have to turn our attention away from building confidence and self-esteem. We've come a long way in the last year. We need to turn that externally and start telling our story across the country and positioning Edmonton in targeted jurisdictions across the world. We need to attract and activate those seeking opportunity. Nowhere better than here exists the opportunity for 18 to 45-year-olds that want to do 2 things: get ahead financially and have impact on their community. You put the axes together for those 2 things and you rank Edmonton against Toronto or Vancouver or Regina or Winnipeg or wherever it happens to be, we stand out like a gold star as an opportunity for 18 to 45-year-olds to come here, get ahead financially, and to have impact on their community. And we need to be aggressive about it. And once they're here, we need to activate them. Not just new people to the community. We have Aboriginal, we have immigrant, we have peoples with disabilities. We have a number of different people we haven't activated properly, and we need to focus on that in order to get the labor force we need. The third piece is we need to enhance and expand our influence as an economic powerhouse. And that's a new Edmonton on the national stage. It's about us getting into Ottawa and having greater influence and not being in the second tier of cities in Canada combined with Quebec and Halifax and Winnipeg and Regina, but it's Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, and Edmonton. We're one of the top 5. The fourth is we need to diversify using our strengths as a platform for innovation. I talked about that earlier. And the fifth is we need to operate as one interconnected, interdependent region. And that doesn't mean amalgamation all the time. That means understanding that we need to be in relation with our neighbors. We need to be in relation with other communities. We need to be tied together with Fort McMurray, Aboriginal, First Nation, Métis. We need to learn how to partner, not just acquire and take over all the time. And that's an important step because it ties us together as an interconnected, interdependent region, because we're dependent on each other, because we all live with the consequences of what we do here. So those are the 5 big points that we want to focus on as we go forward. Gone are the days where things happen to us. Our strategy is sound. Our success lies in our abilities to move forward with intention. At EEDC, we've done a lot of heavy lifting to make sure we embody the culture and spirit needed to move Edmonton forward. The book on your table is not only a statement about how we work, but it's a promise and a standard that which we want you to hold us to. But it's your turn. You're the business owners. It's your business and your businesses that need to embrace the innovation challenge that lies ahead for us as part of a collective imperative. I hope you're up for it. Our team is here to support you. We've built a great team. They're here to support you in what you're doing. But we need to move beyond just talking about it and we need to start living it, because those that embody it will be the leaders of tomorrow. And I hope you're one of them. Thanks very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's do that again. President and CEO of Edmonton Economic Development Corporation, Brad Ferguson, with the 2014 Statement of Intent. We're going to head over here, and we're going to open up for the question and answer period. I think we're good to go. And now, there we go. Welcome back. Nice to have you here. Thanks for your patience. Folks, as we saw in the video, lots has happened in 2013, and there's a renewed excitement and a sense of pride in the city. And people across the country and around the world are taking notice of what's happening here in the capital region. And with that kind of change and that kind of growth comes interest, excitement, and lots of questions. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask our two guests a couple of questions. Then we're going to go to questions from video from Capital Ideas, and then we're going to wrap up back here on the stage. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Let's go. All right. So, gentlemen, in any particular order, with the municipal airport closed and with a first wave of important downtown projects, nice cue, concluded or underway, where are we heading with downtown development? Mayor Iveson?
Well, it's a really exciting time to work downtown for all of us, and to visit downtown, to play downtown, and to invest downtown. You know, you see it in the new restaurants and bars. That hospitality culture is coming more and more alive, and that fosters a great business climate. Some of that's in anticipation, I think, of the arena, which is on track. We should have the guaranteed maximum price, and I'm hopeful that it will be on budget, because if it is, it can move ahead without any delay, and we can be in the ground this spring, and that's going to be a wonderful catalyst and bring yet more people downtown and be a strong sign of confidence in the downtown real estate market. And accompanying that, we've seen companies like Intuit relocate downtown. It was wonderful. It was one of the first things I got to do, is attend the official opening of their new space in the EPCOR building. And I'm told by folks in the real estate sector that there are at least 10 other mid-size suburban office tenants who are looking at downtown for the same reasons Intuit came downtown, which is that their employees, first and foremost, are asking for it. It's a lifestyle thing. It's a work-life balance thing. People want to be where the energy is, and people feel that that's downtown. So I think we're going to see many more of those investments and relocations, and that's going to be great for business. And then to see two big actors out in the market on the private sector side looking for large blocks of office space, I think we'll see cranes downtown, and that's all going to be a very positive sign for Edmonton and a resurgent downtown. But the piece that's still missing to tie it all together is, and I'm going to mention this a couple times, is a complete LRT network that can move labor and patrons for these businesses efficiently in and out of downtown as the city grows, to offset the traffic congestion we'd see otherwise. So there's still one missing piece there that we continue to drive at.
Thanks, Brad.
Well, I think a couple years ago, or about a year ago, we started with a Downtown 2.0, and it was 2 new office towers, 2 new expansions to educational institutions, 2 new arts and culture facilities or sports complexes, 2 new hotels, 2 more access points to the River Valley. And we kind of put it out there, and we didn't know if that was going to be accomplishable or not, but we're at the cusp right now where there's just so much activity and so many piles on my desk that are all people having really interesting things in terms of what they want to build and do downtown. I think what's really important is when we look at greater Edmonton area, and the mayor talked about it specifically, is the speed at which we move people becomes more and more imperative to how we conduct business here. You mentioned the book, Niall Ferguson's book earlier, which is The Institutions, but our institutions fear of becoming slower the more mature we get, unless we put in this kind of infrastructure. So I'd suggest that he nailed it in terms of one of our biggest impediments to a successful downtown is movement of people and ideas.
Okay, thank you both. With over 4 million citizens now living in Alberta, and with impressive demographic growth rates predicted for our city and for most cities in the province, what importance do each of you place on the relationship with the province, and how can we expect to see that relationship develop in the coming months and years?
So I'll take it first. We come from different backgrounds. We all three come from, we have the whole political spectrum here, right here at the,
hey, careful,
on stage.
Don't read too much into it.
You're far right. No, I mean, not sincerely, we have different...
hold on, I'm in local politics because I get to stay away from the traditional political spectrum, so speak for yourself.
Where's the blue tie, Brad?
Anyway, I think what I think what's great about this right now is you bring new relationships together and people from different backgrounds. And Don and I have had probably about 6 times we've worked together over the last month since you came in office. And what's interesting, we have different relationships we bring. And what's really nice is you throw them on the table and you say, okay, who do you know? How do we have influence? What have you done in the past? How do we work together? And then you get in like Reg Milley from the airport or James Cumming from the chamber, and you start to build that team together. And it's not about one person having a relationship with the province. It's a whole collective, and I think that's what this community is so great about. And you know what I really like about today is all the MLAs here. It's a great example because they have interest in the capital region. They know it's an important it's a huge important part of the province, and you can see this renewed sense of excitement that they have of getting interest and back on the agenda, back what we're doing here in the city. So I look forward to the next year.
Yeah, as do I. I mean, the first 3 months have been very positive, having the opportunity to interact with the Premier right out of the gate, right after the election, her invitation for Mayor Nenshi and I to join her for breakfast. And it was a good preliminary conversation. It set the tone for the kind of collaboration that's needed to promote really Alberta as a very competitive and alluring prospect for investment from around the world, and how we can all support each other in doing that. We talked a little bit about specific infrastructure priorities, and we've talked about transit as a top priority for both cities as they really mature into globally competitive urban centers that require that infrastructure to compete. And I think the Premier understands that, as she's well traveled and seen those cities that have that infrastructure and how important it is. And then finally, you know, the other work that we've embarked upon in the city charter, we have a new minister, and Minister Hughes reached out to me directly, and we have a very positive initial discussion about where we can go with the city charter, which ultimately is about maturing the relationship between Edmonton and Calgary and the province, recognizing that the large cities are sophisticated, that they can be trusted with some more autonomy in certain areas, and also that we bear some special burdens as service centers for each half of the province that need to be recognized, and then we need a financial relationship that recognizes those challenges, but sees us as a partner in helping solve problems, whether it's in public health or whether it's in early childhood development, because we really are in it together. And so I think the tone of the conversation is very positive at this point. We just need to continue to carry it forward, and very glad to have Minister Hancock as Deputy Premier to work with. We've known each other for a very long time, and we've got a great relationship as well. So, but yeah, it's a team effort, and as Brad said, we all leverage the different relationships that we have, but right now I think Edmonton is well connected to the provincial government, and I think it's a very good platform to build on.
I'm a little worried about this trip to India. You know, she comes back from Mumbai, and she's going to say, that's not congestion. I'll show you congestion, you know? So we might have some work to do.
Fair enough. I noticed that Deputy Premier Hancock was taking notes. So good work, guys. Before we head to the first of 3 questions from Capital Ideas, let me set some context. Capital Ideas is an initiative of the Edmonton Journal, and it's business owners learning from other business owners by sharing what they've learned by being in business. And generally what happens is entrepreneurs submit their questions, and Capital Ideas puts out the answers. Well, this time we get to turn the tables a little bit, and the members of Capital Ideas get to ask the mayor and Brad some questions. So team, let's cue the first Capital Ideas question.
Hi everyone, my name is Susie Sykes, and I'm owner of Catapult Marketing. Edmonton is a city of entrepreneurs. However, many small business owners like myself are finding it very difficult to find affordable and appropriate office space. Do you have any ideas on how to address this issue? For example, city bylaws make it very difficult to run a business out of a residential address, and commercial lease spaces are getting more and more expensive. Catapult Marketing is a successful small business, but our office is going to be homeless in 6 months when our lease expires. So I would certainly appreciate any thoughts that you might have. Thank you.
Well, we've recently taken the step of reducing the fee, which is one small barrier for home-based businesses, but that's part of signaling an openness for business. There are more things coming down the pipe in the short term to facilitate the permitting process and a lot of the paperwork that's involved for businesses of all sizes, but that are especially a barrier for small business and home-based business. So we're working very hard to streamline that experience for entrepreneurs so that the city is the least of their worries as they're working to set up their business. As far as space, ultimately the market determines that, but I think, you know, we're going to see some adjustment downtown. We're going to see moving around. I hope that's going to open up space. I think there's going to be some opportunity in there for people to find space, and at the end of the day, the other way to offset it is just to try to make sure that that even if you're paying for a location advantage, that it's safe, that it's easy to access, all of the things that are within more the municipal side of things, that it fosters a good environment so that at least you're getting value for money. But the fact that we have high rents is sort of the double-edged sword of having a very strong economy. But so the city's not going to get into subsidizing business for or subsidizing rent for small business, but that's where there is still a bit of a niche for incubation as well, so that at the early stage of startup, whether it's a social enterprise or a business enterprise, being able to access some space, and that's a niche that Startup Edmonton and Tech Edmonton and even to some larger extent the research part fill in ensuring that businesses will have space. But Brad can elaborate on that.
Well, you know, I think you answered most of my point of that, which is we are certainly in the business of helping startup and young entrepreneurs grow, but there's a point in time you have to be self-sufficient. You know, there's a point in time you have to get out in the marketplace and not be in a subsidized environment. That might not be at Jasper 101, although that space is vacant right now. But you know, you add on 2 new towers downtown, and it starts to alleviate some of those space issues. We start to look at some pricing changes going on, changes things in the B-class, C-class buildings, but there's probably some room needed in the city for some flexible space for companies that are just coming out of the incubator space to have that flexibility to grow and be able to move some walls as opposed to just being contained. We're exploring that a little bit, but we're eventually, you know, the goal is to have it out paying full rent. I mean, that's the goal of a successful business, and you can't be a startup forever, so we got to get them there.
Thank you both, and thanks to Susie. Let's go to the second question from Capital Ideas.
My name is Mike Mabey. I'm the president and owner of a company called ATI Composites Canada, Inc. And what we do essentially is take raw materials, such as tailings from the tar sands, rice hulls from other processes, and turn them into useful building materials. The challenge for those of us involved in innovation is it's extremely difficult to find venture capital to take these products out of the lab and into the marketplace. It would appear that if you're not involved in either hydrocarbons or software, that there isn't an appetite for venture capital in this part of the province or in this part of the country. So my question to you is, do you have any ideas on how we might solve that issue and find investors that are interested in something more than software or hydrocarbons?
Brad?
So we're on Dragon's Den now. So it's a great question. We've been plagued with a lack of venture capital here in the province for quite some time. We look at ourselves versus the national numbers, and we aren't hitting above our weight. We're not even hitting at our weight in terms of number of deals. That's changing a little bit. Startup Edmonton's done a great job in terms of attracting some, and Tech Edmonton's done a great job attracting some. There's 2 things I'd like to say on that. One is, I think provincially right now we're looking, and it's not driven out of EDC, but we're in a collection of people looking to figure out how do we activate more capital in the local market right now. And that could be through Alberta Enterprise Corp, it could be through AIMCO, it could be through a number of different facilities. So I think there's a lot of attention on it. But most importantly, I think and I don't mean this negatively, but we've babied a lot of our startups for quite a while. And a lot of our startups aren't venture capital ready. They think they are, but they're not. And we have a very closed environment here that's very protective, but we get those people down into Silicon Valley or into Toronto, and they're getting crushed right now. So we're not preparing them properly. And we need to have stronger teeth, bigger teeth that go into the real world and allow our entrepreneurs to be able to stand up against other comparable companies across the way. So I think we've got a better job to do in the preparation of ours, and we have to get out of this, you know, protectionist Alberta mentality and get them out and put them in front of real competition in the real world. And that's how we build really strong entrepreneurs.
Well, this is definitely Brad's area of expertise, so I'll only add one thing, which is just that I think we want to ensure that our diversification is happening outside of just oil and gas and technology. Those are appealing, they're lucrative, and they're important, but they do get a lot of the attention. So there are other communities, and Cleveland's done some work with a bioscience initiative to really build a cluster around that. So you still have to look a bit at clustering, and so there's some best practices out there that folks in Edmonton have brought to my attention, and we've talked about with Brad. And I think looking at a few clusters, and I think building materials, and this is an interesting technology because it involves reclamation, involves reusing material, which ties into Brad's call to action about cleaner, greener, cheaper, faster, and safer. It meets that test, and so I think there's a sector there that's worth exploring, and then with some clustering, bringing some venture capital to it, there's precedent for it in other communities. We just have to wrap our heads around it.
Thank you both, and thank you to Michael. Now let's go to our final question from Capital Ideas.
My name is Jay Palter. I am the Chief Engagement Officer of Jay Palter Social Advisory. I know both of you gentlemen are extremely busy, you have busy schedules, and my question to you is, why is it important to you to take the time out of your schedules to engage directly with people in online social networks?
Go ahead. You're the expert.
Well, I don't know about that. Well, the same reason why it's important to interact with people in person. You know, we're social creatures, but especially when you're in a decision-making role, you have to have a broad dashboard. You have to have contact with a lot of different people, and social media is an important medium for me because I've got 840,000 people who I need to hear from, and it's a bit of a proxy for that, but it allows me to hear a little bit what's on people's minds, and then also be accessible to them in a way that is increasingly important to citizens as we try to invite them to be more engaged in democracy. The leadership also has to be responsive to them, and social media is an interesting tool for that. Managing the ebb and flow when it's snowing is sometimes challenging, but it's okay. I'm living. I'm surviving.
Before Brad answers, why is it important for you to do it personally and to not have a team of people tweeting out on your behalf? Why does it matter for you to engage that way?
Well, I think people can spot an inauthentic voice on social media, and if you're just using it to push out information, then you can outsource it because you're just using it for broadcast. But if you're actually using it for conversation and interaction, it has to be authentically you, and people are smarter than they are sometimes given credit for, so they can spot something that's not real.
Thanks. Brad?
Well, this is kind of one big experiment for me on social media. I vowed I would never tweet in my life, and then that was only like a year ago, and and so, you know, I'm learning. I started by, you know, I said like 3-4 months, and I said, well, okay, I'm going to do one a day and just try to see what happens, and then pause at the end of 3 or 4 months and say, okay, what are people telling you? Like, what does the world want of you? Because I don't think too many people want to know what I believe or whatever, but, you know, I had to pause and listen and say, what does the world want of us? And it was really interesting. There was this, like, a whole group of students that I never interact with because I've kind of passed that phase of my life, that were right in there every day, wanting to know, you know, job opportunities, what's happening economically, all these things. And next thing you know, you have this group that, you know, kind of looks at you and says, we're really looking for advice. And they want access. And they're not going to get that by coming up, you know, the 5th floor of a tower or the 17th floor of a tower. They want access, and they want to know who you are. And I think that's kind of neat. It's been an interesting experiment for me. It doesn't come naturally at all, but I've really understood the benefit of engaging with different communities that I'd never thought I'd interact with on a daily basis.
Very interesting. It's all about creating that audience that not just follows you, but what you're involved in. And it creates that ecosystem of interest.
Now you got to keep it up.
Absolutely. Thanks to Jay, and let's give a round of applause to Capital Ideas and all of those questions that came from that media source. I'm doing the official time check, folks. Are we good for a couple more questions? Are you enjoying this? Can I see heads nodding? Yes? Okay, here's a question then. You both have demanding jobs. There's lots of pressures on your time. How do you keep up with the pace? Where do you go? Who do you turn to for support? And how do you manage it all? Go ahead.
That's people ask me, you know, the hours must be much worse than being a city councilor, but I can assure you on behalf of the city councilors who are in attendance here that they work very hard too. So the hours aren't that different being the mayor, but the pace is different. The pace is about double or triple on some days, and I actually find that really invigorating. It's great when I'm at work and there's sort of one thing from the next. You don't really have time to dwell or stew on anything, so that's very engaging, but at the end of the day, I am pretty tired out. So, but I try to make it home a few times a week to see my kids, because they're the ones who charge my batteries back up, remind me why I'm doing this work, to try to build the kind of community that they're going to be proud to live in when they grow up. And then, we have phenomenal support from family as well. My wife, Sarah's here actually, and she puts up with a lot for me and for the city. So you find that support where you can get it, and family is very important. We carve out a bit of time. And then the one thing I do need to do is get a little bit more exercise. But so I'm working on it.
Thanks, Don.
I think exercise is probably the most important thing. We have a weekly date night. Kathy and I, and Kathy's here as well with Sarah. We kind of carve out a weekly date night.
They have a support network now.
That's right. And we exercise, but then we sit there and we have dinner together. We kind of go through schedules. We call it scheduling or calendars. And it's funny that people look at us in the restaurant or in a different place, and they'll come over and they'll say, well, there's a couple spending a lot of really quality time together. But it's so important for us to do that for the first half an hour of date night, get that over the way. We know where each other are. And then we spend a lot of time with family. And I'm still half coaching minor hockey. And I get a lot of power through my kids and trying to keep up with them and trying to be a role model to them. And I think that's where you try to find energy. It's all about energy and how do you manage your energy. And you eat, you eat well, and you have a lot of water and a lot of exercise and a lot of love, and it works. So I thank Kathy for that.
Perfect. 2 more questions. What importance does each of you place on organizational culture, and what can we expect to see from EEDC and from the City of Edmonton on this front?
Well, organizational culture is critical for any group. We're shifting the tone a little bit at the city, and it's not just in the last 3 months, but City Manager Simon Farbrothers here, and I want to commend him for the work that he's been doing to shift the thinking within city administration. The traditional criticism of the city has been that it's very, very deeply siloed, and he's been working very, very hard, not single-handedly, but with the branch managers and down to frontline people to change that thinking, and the moniker is One City, and you really start to hear it coming back. We see it in the presentations that we receive. And most importantly, what that starts to turn into is not just a tagline, but real meaningful collaboration across departments, and then and a sense of integration in the corporation. And then once you have that, it starts to be a lot easier to think about innovation in public service, and how can we do things differently, and how can this department support something over there, and it's not seen as, well, if I don't get it, it's a loss for me, it's a win for the corporation. And so that culture is changing, and I think council has an important role to play in a certain level of risk tolerance around innovation in the corporation, and in supporting that One City model. And I think our budget deliberations went very smoothly because of the work city administration had done to prepare a good, integrated, thoughtful budget for us, and then to supply the information that allowed council to have a debate in the same vein. And so I think that culture is maturing at the city, and hopefully it'll mean we'll be a better partner for business and a better service provider to citizens over time.
Thank you. Brad?
First comment is I agree. I think Simon and his team have done a fantastic job at the city, starting this process and getting us there. 12 years as a strategy consultant, I can honestly say that culture trumps strategy every time. You can write the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have the underlying culture to execute it, you've wasted your time and money on people like me over the years. And so when we were at EEDC, when we did the turnaround a little bit at EEDC over the last year, it was all about culture. It was all about getting that spirit and embody that spirit and attitude right off the start, because we figured we needed to embody the spirit that we thought Edmonton should have. And we're kind of that front organization, that first impression organization, and if we didn't embody it, we don't know who else would. So, what we tried to do is we put such an emphasis on culture, and what we did is we were able to take things like E-Town, which you saw in the video, from concept to stage in 6 months. It's unheard of, but you had a whole organization that just wanted to make this happen. They were so excited to be a part of it. And if you tie in people that want to be a part of something, along with their ability to be recognized and have a voice and be engaged in it, and you put those two things together, just magic kind of happens. And you bring out the best of people, you blow the dust off them, and they become incredible employees. And so everything's about culture for us.
Okay, thank you both. Final question. With at least 20 municipalities in the capital region and on the capital board, and with
we're out of time.
On cue. And with a number of First Nations governments in the region, how do each of you work together to encourage that many village, town, county, city councils, and First Nations governments to row in the same direction and agree on potentially divisive issues?
Well, this is why I want to actually thank the Chamber of Commerce for one of the things that James said last week, which was not the part about amalgamation, because I really don't think we're at that point yet. I think there's still a lot of opportunity. But the call to action from the Chamber that resonated with me was that we do need to pull together to build one great regional economy here. And then we need to collaborate to do good land use planning, to decide not where all 24 of our separate fiefdoms are going to have their separate tax bases and industrial tax bases to prop up their given municipality, but where are the big clusters of manufacturing activity going to occur? Where are the big clusters of petrochemical activity going to be? Where do the logistics hubs need to go? And then what is the infrastructure that's needed to support the growth of this whole region? And that was the first call to action. And I think that's the important work that still lies ahead. It's partly finished by the Capital Region Board, but the culture that we need, and it's the one that I intend to continue to try to lead at the Capital Region Board, is one of collaboration and working together, because those are the terms of engagement we have today. They're the terms of engagement we're going to have for the foreseeable future. And I've worked hard in my time at the region as a councillor to come to the table in good faith and work in a neighborly way with the mayors around us. There are also some opportunities, as you mentioned, to work with Indigenous communities adjacent to us and nearby, but in particular with the other local governments. The Capital Region Board is the vehicle we have to work through, but our neighbors do need to come to the table as well and think a little bit beyond their borders. And we have the opportunity to do that with the land use plan review, which has to include economic development, has to include infrastructure planning. And if we can get to that in the next 12 to 18 months, then we can show what real functional regional collaboration looks like. I'm confident we can. That's the tone I'm setting with my colleagues in the region, and I look forward to working with them.
Thank you. Brad?
I agree with your position 100%. And what people forget about, and you don't see it every day, is we work every day with the region and different municipalities. And we've got teams in our organization, teams in city administration that are working all the time on little projects. If a foreign investor comes into town and wants a piece of land, it'd be really nice if that happened in the city region. But if not the city, then the region. If not the region, then the province. If not the province, then the country. And we have to keep, we have to keep that in perspective all the time. And so there's a ton of things that go on each and every day. What we tried to do at EEDC last year was build the best organization we can. This year, we're trying to turn ourselves around a little bit and say, how do we become a value to the region? And then with that, how do we become a value to the region? Then we can start to redefine maybe how we work together a little bit more. So that's been our planned approach, and I think we're going to see the same in tourism. We're going to see the same in a number of different opportunities. It's not about amalgamation for me. It's we have to learn how to work together. We have to find new relationships, and because we can't amalgamate everything. We're going to need to define relationships and be good at it. So,
ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Brad Ferguson and Mayor Don Iveson for all of their insights today at this luncheon. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the draw for the flight to Dallas-Fort Worth. Do we have the basket of tickets? Do we have the basket of tickets? Oh, here we go. We're gonna get Manfred. Everybody give Manfred a round of applause. He's making everything, all the trains run on time. Thanks, Manfred. Mayor Iveson, would you draw for us, please? I'll get you to announce the name. Drum roll, please. Come on, drum roll, please. Let's go. And the winner is
Betty Vepstis from Innovation and Advanced Education Enterprise Division of the Alberta Government.
Perfect. So Betty, just stick back and we'll get this to you at the end of our broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, this ends the formal part of our program for today. For members of the media, you can stay and you'll be now escorted up here to the stage, and you're welcome to interview today's speakers up here. For those of you viewing online and those of you here at the Shaw Conference Centre, thank you for taking the time to join us today. It's your involvement and your participation in civic society that ensures that our institutions remain strong. The team at EEDC wishes you all the very best and much success in 2014. My name is Randy Boissonneau. It has been a pleasure to serve as your MC today. May each of you find your invincible summer.